This has Mets fans very concerned. Simply put, New York has struggled greatly of late, which is concerning not only fans, but also insiders, some of whom are questioning how good this New York Mets team really is, which is exactly what we're going to dive into only here on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to talk about the Mets struggles, but first we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being the fact that 69.9% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here on Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in and turn it over to the experts, starting it off with Will Salmon of The Athletic, who begins the topic of discussion about last night's game. He says, quote, "By the time Cleveland Guardians first baseman Carlos Santana dropped the ball on a relay play from right field, New York Mets third base coach Mike Scarborough had already told hard-charging Tyrone Taylor to hold up. Taylor obeyed Scarborough's orders, hitting the brakes after a hard turn and retreating to third base. Long afterward, Met manager Carlos Mendoza said he approved the decision not to send Taylor home on Francisco Lindor's double, in part because of the circumstances. Mendoza later said in the postgame, quote, "I thought it was 100% the right call." Now, what he's referring to is in last night's game, it was the bottom of the ninth. The Mets had a couple of runners on. Francisco Lindor, of course, hit a double, and Scarborough held the brakes on Tyrone Taylor due to the ball that was hit to right field. He thought that Taylor would be dead to rights, and maybe with a good throw he would have been, but the fact that he bobbled the ball is an indication that Taylor would have easily been safe. And also, given the Mets struggles of late, you really needed to send Taylor. Taylor is your fastest runner, and if he gets thrown out, oh well, he gets thrown out, but instead he wanted to turn it to Juan Soto and Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil. More to come on that in just a little bit. As how exactly did it play out? Well, Salmon has you covered. He says, tie score, bottom of the ninth, 1 out. Juan Soto up next. Pete Alonso up after that. If this were blackjack, the dealer would advise to stay. But from there, Taylor never moved from third base. The Guardians intentionally walked Soto. Alonso struck out. That was the kiss of death for the game. That was the end of the game right there, in my opinion. Jeff McNeil lined out. He hit it hard, but it was a line out. Mets obviously didn't score. Inning over, chance gone. So what does this mean overall? Well, questions like whether or not to send Taylor home tend to carry an outsized impact after games when a bigger issue is at play. The real question after New York's 7-6 loss last night in 10 innings on Monday night at Citi Field is just how good are the New York Mets? So overall, how should Met fans feel? Well, Salmon says New York rallied from a 5-run deficit on Monday only to lose because of poor starting pitching, Brett Beatty's throwing error in the 10th inning, which also didn't help because Francisco Lindor has an ejecto mitt last night, and an inability to cash in more runs late in the game. It is the first week of August. Not time to panic. Yet, the Mets find themselves in such a position mostly because of how well they played over the first 2 months of the season, not the last 2 months. So let's dive into his main points. He notes the recent play, saying that since June, the Mets are 27 and 28, and the starting rotation are the two biggest concerns. And I agree that they are two big concerns, but let's go ahead and take a look at the wild card. Of course, the Mets, they're only 1 game up over the San Diego Padres, who have that third wild card spot, and are only 4 games up over the red-hot Cincinnati Reds. Of course, 1.5 back of the Philadelphia Phillies, 2 in the loss column with the last night loss and the Phillies win last night. Now, I was at the game on the 11th of June, and everything was perfect. We're going to take it back a little bit to that day. David Peterson threw a complete game shutout. It was the first and only one of 2025 for the Mets. It was awesome. Everything felt electric. The crowd was great. And then the next day, all was also great. The Mets were up 4-0, top of the 6th, and then, as we've covered, Kodai Senga got injured. Now go ahead and check out that video from way before if you want more details on it, but I bring this up because the Mets ended up winning the game. They advanced to 21 games over the 500 mark and 5.5 up on the Philadelphia Phillies in the division. So all sounded great, right? Yeah, but the win was only 4-3 thanks to Ryan Stanek. And obviously a scare because it just seems like that always happens when it comes to Stanek. Now look at his recent game log. Of course, that day he was terrible in the 9th inning. It was a 4-0 game in the 9th. He was only tasked with getting 3 outs with a 4-run cushion lead to rely on. And he pitched 0.0 innings. Did not record an out. 3 hits, 3 runs, 2 of them earned. ERA spiked from 3.22 to 4.03, and it was only because of Edwin Diaz coming in and getting the save that the Mets won that game against the Nationals. Now, that was on the 12th of June. Obviously, as you can see from the stats, Stanek hasn't been good since. A 7.94 ERA since that day, 15 earned runs over 17 innings pitched, a current ERA of 5.03. And it started a bad stretch. We all know this stretch very well. The Mets went 3-14 in their next 17 games, being outscored 112 to 51. As you see towards the bottom of your screen, the Mets were swept by the Pirates, outscored immensely, 30 to 4. I mean, it was terrible. But after that, they caught a little fire. They were 7-4 going to end the half, and they ended the first half pretty well. They were in the lead for the division. They took 2 out of 3 in the latter series part of the Subway Series, and then they lost 2 out of the break. But after that, hey, a 7-game winning streak. They preceded this, though, with a 1-6 stretch that they are taking into the day. So, overall, since that day, since the 12th of June, the Mets are 18-26. They're 8 games under 500 and lost 7 games of a division lead that, of course, now is trailing in the division by a game and a half. Now, not only has the team struggled, and obviously they have, and because of that, you're going to see both offensive and defensive struggles, more on the pitching side, which we're going to dive into right now, starting off with the offense. I want to use Francisco Lindor as an example because he best serves how this Met offense overall has been. Go ahead and check out my most recent video, or one of my most recent videos, about how the Fab Four has been doing and how much that means towards the New York Met team. It's about Steve Gelbs making a comment, and really, Francisco Lindor is the heart of that. It seemed as if last year, and this year especially, when Francisco Lindor is hitting, the Mets are winning. When Francisco Lindor is not hitting, the Mets are simply not winning. Now, I bring up these stats because as Lindor has progressively gotten worse throughout the season with a little tick up in July, the Met offense has resembled exactly that. A 255 average and 753 OPS in the month of April, 133 runs scored, good for 4.9 per game. That was really solid. The Mets had a really solid April. We'll get to that in just a little bit. As for the month of May, 249 batting average, 743 OPS, 107 runs. That's good for a 3.96 runs per game. A little bit worse, but still solid overall, kind of like Lindor stats that you see there. An 802 OPS is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Now, you get to the month of June, and the Mets have historically struggled in the month of June. A 239 batting average, 735 OPS, 113 runs scored, 4.19 per game. Not very good. You see that with Lindor. He had his worst month of 2025 in the month of June. And then for July, down to 225 as a team for batting average, 685 OPS. That is below the 700 mark. Just 105 runs scored, good for 4.38 per game. Anyone else noticing a trend? Yeah. It has gotten worse throughout the year. And when Francisco Lindor is not hitting, this New York Met team is not hitting. But what about the other side? The pitching side and the defense is also very important in baseball, right? Yes, it is, but you're going to see the same trends. Month of April, 2.68 ERA, 84 runs against. That's really good. Just 3.1 runs against per game. That is incredible. Really, really good stuff overall from that Met pitching staff. Not only the rotation, but also the bullpen. Also solid in May. 3.08 ERA, 96 runs against. Good for a 3.6 runs against per game. They were lethal in April and May. Best ERA pitching staff overall. Bullpen starting rotation for a while. But then things fell off quickly. A 4.80 ERA in June, 139 runs against. That is 5.1 runs per game against per game. And in July, 3.99 ERA, 101 runs against, 4.2 per game. So, very similarly to the trends that you see with Francisco Lindor, you see it with the New York Mets. And it corresponds to their record overall. It's right here. There it is. There is the New York Met record. They were great in April. Lindor was hitting. The pitching staff was great. Obviously, a 704 winning percentage. They did really, really well. Move it over to May. A little bit worse of a record. Into June. Bad record. A little bit better in July record-wise. A little bit better from Lindor. A little bit better from the pitching staff. It all has corresponded perfectly. As for the pitching staff, a little bit more detail on that. Since Kodai Senga got injured that day, when he had the injury on the 12th of June. He has been really, really bad since his return. 11 earned runs over 16 innings pitched. ERA spiked from 147, which was incredible, to a 231. And yes, this includes the good comeback start the first time he came back from injury when he pitched well, 4 scoreless innings. But the last 3 starts have been abysmal for Senga. As for Clay Holmes, 21 earned runs over his last 34 innings pitched. ERA spiked from 295 up by half a point to 345. Frankie Montas has a 6.66 ERA on the season. Sean Manaea up to a 3.52 after entering last night with a 2.08 ERA. I was at the game last night, and during it, he was shoving for 5 innings. ERA was in the mid-ones, and then it spiked after he gave up 5 earned runs in that 6th inning. And let's talk about the 6th inning. 0 New York Met pitchers besides David Peterson have pitched 6 or more innings since June 7th. They cannot get length out of their starting pitchers. Now, David Stearns addressed this at the trade deadline. He went out and got 3 big arms: Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, and Gregory Soto. That should help because it'll beef up the back end of the bullpen. You can rely on that bullpen a little bit more, but your starters have to occasionally reach and go farther than the 6th inning. You will not win a World Series. You might not even make the playoffs if your starting pitchers are consistently giving you 5 innings and David Peterson maybe every 5th day gives you 6 or 7 innings. No, that simply will not work. That is not how baseball works. Let's turn it back to the overall monthly comparison. Let's compare how the runs scored and the runs against are, and obviously it's going to correspond with the win percentage. 4.9 runs scored in April to 3.1 against. 19-8 record. Great. May, 3.96 scored, 3.6 against. 15-12. Solid. June, 4.19 scored to 5.1 against. 12-15 under 500 record. As for July, 438 scored, 4.2 against, a little bit better, and a 14-10 record, a little bit better. But the struggles overall, especially of late since that Kodai Senga injury day, it falls on 4 guys. Jeremy Hefner, who consistently has his pitchers walking batters, and it is just such a frustration of mine and multiple other Met fans, and the fact that he can't get length out of his pitchers. And yes, those 2 things correspond as well. When you're walking batters, your pitch count gets higher, and you will not go as far as a starting pitcher. Well, Hefner seems like he can't address this. As for the hitting coaches, you got Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez. The Met offense consistently is slumping. They went 6 innings last night with doing nothing before Pete Alonso hit a 3-run homer, and that's due to a little luck because Francisco Lindor started the inning by reaching first base on a drop third strike. Juan Soto reached on a fielder's choice. He hit the ball really hard, don't get me wrong, but it's a fielder's choice and an error, and then Alonso capitalized with the 3-run shot. Now, honestly, it might be this guy's fault to a certain degree. Carlos Mendoza consistently in the postgames is saying the same thing. He doesn't take accountability in terms of his players. He doesn't knock his players. That's one thing that I really liked about Buck Showalter when he was the manager in 2022 and 2023. And don't get me wrong, I didn't mind when Showalter was gone. I said, all right, I think this could be a good opportunity. I don't think it necessarily was the best move, but it could be the right opportunity if they bring in the right guy. Now, originally, I didn't think Mendoza was the right guy. I'll admit that. And then the second half of 2024 happened, and obviously I said, yeah, he is the guy. Start to 2025, but of late, he is not showing that he is a good manager. He's not managing his starting pitchers well. He's managing the bullpen okay. I don't mind that. And overall, the lineup construction isn't terrible, but he refuses to give a guy a day off. And sometimes I question his hitting moves, like yesterday when he's letting Luis Torrens swing 2-0, who is a 217 hitter coming into play. He lets him swing 2-0, and then, yeah, he hits the ball hard, almost went out of the park, but it was flyout. It ended the game in a 7-6 game down to your last out when you couldn't pinch hit Luis Torrens because he was the only catcher left on your bench. So overall, a lot of questionable moves from Mendoza, not taking accountability in the sense of knocking his players. As let's turn it back over to Salmon, who is going to end his article saying, it was a shame for the Mets to lose because they followed the script that should have worked for them. Their lineup supplied runs. They got 6 of them. Their bullpen was stingy. Their bullpen was good. Helsley gave up 2 runs, but they're unearned because of the throwing error / ejecto mitt Francisco Lindor, and of course throwing error on Brett Baty. It's how the Mets are now built for October. But there are still 8 weeks left of the regular season. The Mets are 1-3 since the trade deadline. They have lost 3 of their last 4, 6 of their last 7. 3 were plenty of questions. There were plenty of questions worth raising on Monday night. None bigger than wondering how good a team they actually are. And yeah, I'm starting to question the same thing. There just seems something missing from this New York Mets squad. So go down there in the comment section. Let me know if you agree. Let me know what you think is missing. For me, I think it's a little bit of accountability on the sense of Mendoza. And overall, it's just not being able to mesh everything together. Seems as if when the pitching is great, the offense isn't there. When the offense is great, the pitching isn't there. That's a sign of a team that is not having success of late. And when you're not having success, the luck is not going to fall in your favor. Mets hit a lot of balls hard last night, but they couldn't score enough runs. They couldn't seem to get one out of the park before Alonso hit the 3-run homer. And yeah, overall, they're struggling. They are not doing well of late, but it's not talked about enough because the other team in New York has had even worse struggles, which is something that is helping the Mets, I guess, in terms of not getting bad publicity, but they simply haven't been very good of late. So let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Give me your thoughts as to why this team has been struggling so much of late. For me, I think it's the accountability from the manager, and then it just trickles down from there. But again, let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you today on Mets Digest. Thank you so much always for watching, and let's go Mets.